Since 1961, thousands of faculty have shared their knowledge and expertise with our amazing students. And while not one of these individuals have walked the same path, we all have found one thing in common: purpose. We find meaning in our instruction that transcends beyond the classroom. For most of us, this is not a profession, it's a calling. This podcast captures the stories of some incredible faculty who continue to show up in today's evolving educational landscape. Welcome to Purpose, a Faculty Excellence Institute podcast.
Hello and welcome to Purpose, a Faculty Excellence Institute podcast. My name is Ryan Eberhard, and I'm here today with Dr. Tyler Olivier. He is the Department Chair for STEM at Generation Park campus, and soon to be Department Chair for STEM at the online campus as well, and a faculty member in biology. So welcome, Tyler.
Thank you for having me, Ryan. I'm excited to be here.
Excellent. Can we start off by just having you tell us a little bit about your background?
Yeah, so I'm from Patterson, Louisiana, which is real South Louisiana. It's a little bayou town. One side of the city is bordered by the Bayou Teche, and if you go too far on the other side of the city, you're in the Atchafalaya Basin. So, I'm down there in the swamps of Louisiana. I'm the oldest of all of my siblings, but none of us have the same two parents. My parents were really young when I was born, and I was actually raised by my father's parents. So I grew up in the house with my grandparents, almost as like the youngest child of that group. Really, kind of disciplined upbringing. By the time I was 5, both of my parents were in the military. So, not seeing them too often because I stayed in Patterson with my grandparents. But it was a really good upbringing. I mean, I got the opportunity to being a small town, I got the opportunity to kind of just like rip and run all day long until it got dark. So I had a core group of friends who I'm still friends with today, and our parents kind of let us roam the city of Patterson just quite freely. So being a little boy, we would get in trouble, but it was a cool place to be. You didn't have to worry about a lot of things. Everybody's parents knew you, so someone was always looking out for you. So that was pretty cool. And then I just like any other kid in my area, pretty much it was a lot of playing sports during the day, playing video games at night when we went into the house, and just kind of doing that type of thing, eating the good food of South Louisiana, partying like we do. That starts at a very early age. So it was a good upbringing. A lot, like I said, a lot of sports, a lot of hanging out with friends, and kind of exploring the world. Right? We go across the bayou and go swim in the bayou with alligators and all those other things that are back there. Just running around in the early 90s.
So do you think that's where your fascination and your appreciation for nature came to be?
A part of it did come from that. I've always been fascinated with the aquatic world. Not sure where I got it from, but I've just always been fascinated with life underwater. But honestly, I there was this situation that kind of really made me appreciate other living things. And I still remember it to this day. One day, me and my best friend, we were in his backyard, had a BB gun, right? And that's typical of young kids in my area. Mm. And we're just going around, and this is one of my proudest moments. We're just going around shooting the gun, and there was a lizard on a tree. And I just so happened to shoot the lizard. And the lizard didn't die instantly. It went through like this phase of agony. And it changed my life forever. Yeah. And I really became someone who began to appreciate nature, to appreciate life, and to not see myself, as a lot of humans do, as there's something that's outside of the natural world, right? And the natural world bends to you. we're a part of it.
Yeah.
And I think that one experience, and I always go back to that. Like I said, I'm not proud of it, but being a kid, it really made me begin to appreciate life for what it was. And since that point on, I've been someone who was always about preserving life, trying to improve the natural world and things like that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, but that says something about you that you took that experience that way.
Yeah, it's rough. And I think about it today, man. It still bothers me sometimes. But I do believe that was kind of what triggered me wanting to learn more about life and how life works.
That's nice. What about school? What was your relationship with school like as a young child?
Oh, I've always been a really good student. I've always been curious. My grandmother used to call me a question mark because I asked a ton of questions. So I think that actually helped me in my career as a biologist, right? As a scientist. It all starts with questions and your ability to ask those questions and then go find the answers to those questions. So I always had a really good relationship with school. Pretty much made good grades kind of throughout. For a large part of that time, not even having to try to make good grades, kind of that type of thing. But I always enjoyed school. I always wanted to be at school. It never was one of those things where someone had to force me to go. I like being there, and I just always enjoyed to learn new information. And then being able to use that information if needed. I always felt that was important. I enjoyed school. And I had some really good teachers at a young age. Like from kindergarten to about 5th grade, I had this series of teachers who were just amazing. And they poured into me in different ways. And they fostered that desire to learn. And then on top of that, when I get home, my grandmother would be doing the same thing. I mean, she was one of those, I call her mom, so it's almost like she's a parent. She would come to school and read to my classes, right? Like I still remember this 3rd grade. She dressed up in a full baseball outfit, and she came to campus and read Casey at the Bat. And that was one of my favorite stories growing up. So she's in this full kind of costume. She brought like sunflower seeds and the stuff that you would, Cracker Jacks, stuff like that. She brought it to the class, and she sat there and read to us. So I always had people who was kind of nurturing the student in me. And no one ever made it seem like it was an uncool thing to be smart or to want to be in school.
Yeah.
So I really appreciate that. Like I said, and not saying my teachers past 5th grade didn't contribute anything, but those from about kindergarten to 5th grade, you're only dealing with that teacher in the classroom. We didn't switch classes.
Right.
So they influenced me a ton.
Yeah, and it's important to have that start early on, you know, and then after that, it's off to the races, right?
Yeah.
You can find your own way, and then you start picking your own classes when you get to middle school and high school. So what about college? I know you had a bit of a unique college experience, so can you tell us a little bit about that, and then how you got involved in majoring in biology?
Gotcha. College was fun, man. So I as we know, you can see on my cup, I went to LSU. But honestly, I cried, and not tears of joy when I got accepted into LSU. I cried because I didn't want to go to LSU.
Yeah, I cried my first day in the dorms too.
I did not want to go there. I wanted to go to Tulane. Well, it was a couple things that happened. So obviously, I was a football player, so I was going through the process of getting recruited. And at the time, I had committed to go to Georgetown. Now, Georgetown, they don't play Division I football. They play like Division III football. So they didn't really have scholarships for football. So to get someone like me there, they would have to put out a ton of financial aid. So we kind of had that agreement, and then right up to the last minute, they decided to go with someone else that played the same position as me because they were closer to the D.C. area. So now I was kind of like, yo, what am I going to do? Because all my eggs were in that Georgetown basket. So honestly, even though being a good student, I only applied to 2 colleges. in Louisiana, that was LSU and Tulane. Tulane put me on the waiting list because I kind of applied a little late, and the only place I could go was LSU. But it worked out. I had an amazing experience at LSU, met some amazing people, and then I also got the opportunity to play college football. So I played my first 2 years at LSU. So my freshman and sophomore year, I played football. Nick Saban was the head coach at the time, so I got the experience to play for Coach Saban. And I also got an opportunity to win a national championship.
Congratulations.
Thank you. I appreciate it. And that was a really cool experience. It was one of those things I can always look back to draw strength and inspiration from, because coming out of high school, I was actually a really good football player. I was all-state, kind of had all these, accolades, defensive MVP, all this type of stuff. I get to LSU, I'm now a walk-on, right? So I'm not a scholarship player. I'm pretty much just on the scout team, right? To go from being a star to being at the bottom of the totem pole, that's a little different. So it taught me about, I already knew what hard work was, but it kind of gave me more of that. It taught me about doing something and being dedicated to something, even if you're not the person getting the praise in the end, right? Because they don't interview the walk-ons after the games, right? You don't have all the people screaming your name. They don't really know who you are, but you were contributing to that team, and you would get that from your teammates, right? So the first team, so I was a running back, so I was on scout team offense. I went up against the first team defense every day in practice. That ended up being one of the best defenses in college football that year. So I had a part in that, right? Because I got them prepared to play every week. So that was a really cool experience, man. To win a championship, and to say that you were the best for that season, and then for it to be the first time LSU had won a championship since like 58 or something like that. So it had been nearly 50 years or so since we had a championship. So that was really cool. And we actually kind of were the start of the success that LSU has now. Like, LSU wasn't that premier program up until that point. So that felt really good. But then from an educational standpoint, right, the academic side of it, I got some really cool experiences out of that too. Not knowing it, it's some of the things I was able to do kind of set the scene for me in the future. So I started out really, really, to say I was pretty smart, I was really, really green about a lot of things and ignorant to a lot of things when it came to higher education. I mean, which makes sense. I was the first person in my family to, my immediate family to go to college. So I knew I liked science, and I was just like, all right, if I had to pick a job, I'm going to be a medical doctor. So that takes me to biology, right? And through that process, I started to learn that I wasn't that interested in medicine or in humans in that aspect. I was more interested in the study of life itself and how we get here, how do we, operate as a living organism, how we interact with other living organisms. All of the appreciation for all of that came out of those classes I took as an undergrad, but then also some of the other experiences I had. So I had an opportunity to work with a mammologist, to do some field work with a mammologist. He was my ecology teacher. So that was one of my first field experiences as a researcher. We would go out to trap bats and trap other rodents for his study. Fast forward 20 or so years, I'm doing a bat project with students here at San Jac, right? And that was the first thing I kind of did as a young scientist, was trap bats. So that was pretty cool. I got my first bit of lab work. I spent time dissecting fish intestines to go through the waste products that was in their intestines to determine what they had been eating, because it was a study trying to determine if red drum were affecting the oyster beds in Louisiana. So that was an interesting experience because I could still smell that lab. Think about defrosting fish intestines and all the poop and stuff that's inside of that, the smell that comes out of that.
Not just the fish, but the inside of the fish.
The inside of the fish. You know what fish smell like. The inside of the fish smell even worse. But getting those experiences, I really do believe it set the stage for what eventually come with me in higher education and academia and in research.
And you still wanted to do it, huh?
I did. The smell couldn't keep me away. Now I would wear like 2 and 3 pair of gloves, which is probably not great for the environment, but I couldn't walk around with that smell on my hands. But the idea that I was contributing to moving science forward, even though I wasn't the one writing the papers at the time, but I was contributing to them getting that information to be able to do what they needed with it. I thought that was very important, very valuable, and it also gave me a bit of a purpose. It started to show me this direction that I don't have to be a medical doctor. I can do this research, right, and be just as fulfilled as I thought being an MD would have. So that really kind of set the stage for me. Though playing football showed me that you could get through anything that's tough, and even when you're not the star, you can be someone who contributes and you can be meaningful. And then on the academic side of the house, I think it really let me understand. How do I want to say? I don't want to say how smart I can be, but the talent and the impact that I can have. Yeah. So the intellectual talent I had and the impact that I can have on science, it started to show me that in those experiences.
Yeah, I mean, that's so interesting. I never would have thought how your two experiences would coincide so much, but it's basically, somebody had to be the scout team running back, and somebody had to dig through the fish intestines, right?
The dirty work.
Yeah, the dirty work, right? The glue guy.
Yeah.
But yeah, you're contributing in that way to something bigger than yourself.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly. And that meant something to me.
Yeah.
And I think it still plays a part in who I am today. Even though I'm typically out in front in a lot of cases, I don't have to be that. I can be perfectly fine in the background as a contributor. So that helped a bunch.
Yeah, that's great. Great experience. So then what led you to San Jac specifically?
San Jac. So I wrap up my PhD in 2013, and I go from Lafayette, Louisiana. I go back home and I actually teach. I was a science teacher. I wasn't just a biology teacher. I was a science teacher. I taught science at my old high school because as I was graduating in the spring of 2013, the person who taught me science at my high school was retiring. And he actually had a bunch of vacation time built up. So he took that off time in that spring semester, and my high school needed somebody to come in and essentially sub in these spaces. So that last semester of my PhD, my fellowship hadn't ran out, so money was tight. So I kind of served as a long-term sub for that last semester while wrapping up my PhD. And I eventually actually get the position, which was pretty cool. I taught at my old high school for 2 years. After I got my PhD, it also gave me an opportunity to coach. So I coached football. So I was assistant coach in football, and I was the head girls basketball coach. In that coaching experience, I really believe it helps me in my role now as a department chair. Right, it showed me kind of how to lead. How to lead the people you're supposed to be leading. I tap into those coaching experiences a bunch as a department chair. So I did the 2 years at my high school, and I enjoyed teaching there, but it didn't feel like the teaching I was doing when I had to TA in grad school. And I wanted that. Like, it was a little bit more freedom in front of the college classroom. I could get a little bit deeper into the topics in front of the college classroom. So I wanted that. I wanted that feeling. So I started to adjunct at Delgado Community College in New Orleans. So I would drive from Patterson to New Orleans a couple times a week. I think it was once or twice a week I would have to drive so I could start teaching college classes. I also brought dual credit to my high school for the first time there because I just wanted that kind of college experience. So this is around 2015. I actually come to Houston to watch Duke play in the Sweet 16. They were playing. This is the year this is the last championship that they actually won. They were playing in the Sweet 16 and the Elite Eight in NRG. So it was one of the nights. I was just sitting in my hotel room. I was like, let me search the professor jobs in Houston, and San Jac popped up. I applied. I actually interviewed for, I think, the Central Campus, and they didn't hire me. And then about a week later, the North Campus called me in for an interview. So I come up to interview. I do the phone interview, and eventually they call me to campus. I do the in-person interview. And before I got on I-10, I was getting a call back like, we want you at San Jac. So I pick on some of the people I knew who were in my interview from Central Campus. They were still here when I got hired. So I would pick on them occasionally that y'all could have had me at Central, but y'all let me go to North, which was a blessing.
Hey, we loved you at North.
Yeah, right. So, but, that's kind of what I was looking for, that college teaching experience. And by this point, I knew I wanted to be a teacher. I didn't want to be a researcher. I love doing research. I don't like hustling for money. So that kind of pushed me away from all of the R1 institutions that I could have applied for when I was leaving out of grad school. And I don't think my major advisor appreciated that a lot. I think he wanted me to be a researcher because I think I was pretty good at it. At least he would tell me I was pretty good at it. But I knew I didn't want my career to be based off of how many papers I published, how much money I brought into an institution. I just thought that was that wasn't what I wanted. I really enjoyed standing in front of the classroom, seeing the expression on my students' faces when it starts to click, or when they have those wow moments. Because I used to have those wow moments as a student when I would learn something new. And it's like, really? That really happens? Like learning about jumping genes. Like you don't teach that in high school. Like you don't get into that part of molecular biology. But there are genes that move from one place to another. And I remember hearing that for the first time, like, what? This stuff happens? So I started to really enjoy having those interactions with my students. So I knew I wanted to be a teacher. And I think going back to kind of my upbringing, I was raised in the church, and by the time I was 7, 8 years old, I would be in front of the church talking. And when I got into my teenage years, there were several times where I was responsible for the sermon, right? Like on the youth Sundays or whatever, I would be up there preaching. And as I look back on those experiences, I saw how much I would be teaching through the sermon, right? And I could see it still today when the approach I take to teaching, right? Taking my time as we go through these things and delivering on what it is that I believe you need to know, right? I think all that stuff came from me giving those sermons when I was a lot younger,
Yeah,
not knowing it was shaping me into a
If you
teacher.
come at it from a public speaking standpoint, you need to make sure that the audience is coming with you.
Exactly.
Right?
We're going on a journey.
Yeah.
And that's how I actually teach my classes. That I'm teaching you biology, but I'm not just teaching you DNA, RNA. And we're about to go on a journey. And I'm going to teach this as a story. I want you to kind of hear it that way. So I think all that came from my time in the church as a youngster and being out in front of people. But I caught that love for teaching as a TA, and I never looked back.
Well, you talked a little bit about teaching in high school and not getting the experience you wanted. When you got to San Jac, was it what you expected, or what were some of the differences between that and high school?
So, I think it kind of was what it was what I wanted it to be. Even from the first day, I didn't want my students to know that I was the professor. So kind of jeans, backwards hat. And I was just sitting in the class in one of the chairs as they were walking in. And we're just sitting there. I'm still in the crowd with the students. And they're like, "Where's the teacher?" And then I just stand up and go to the front, and they're looking at me like, you're not the teacher. Trust me, I am. So that was a pretty cool experience on the first class. But from what I was looking for, I got it out of those experiences. Having those deep conversations with my students about the content, right? Being able to take them a little bit further than I would have been able to do in a high school class. Having them start to ask meaningful questions, right? That they're beginning to formulate based off of what they're learning. That was all the stuff I was looking for. And then the thing I didn't know I needed that San Jac provided me with was a group of students who had the skills, right? They have the intellectual talents, but they may not know it, or no one has ever kind of fostered those things in them. So I had this group of students, and it's not all of our students, but
Good soil.
Yeah, good soil, right? That can produce fruit, right? If you give it a little TLC. And that's what San Jac provided me with. This group of students who their life could be in the balance. And I'm actually moving that needle in a certain direction with them being in my classroom. And that's what San Jac gave me. I didn't know I needed that, but I began to appreciate that more and more because I could start to see the changes in some of my students' lives and their ability to go off and do what they want to do. To the point now, still being in the kind of the same community around the North Campus, I'm seeing my former students, in the community doing the things that they want to do, being, in their careers and stuff like that. And I think that's very, very rewarding that I get to see what happened to these individuals who kind of came through my classroom.
And would you say that's your purpose?
It is. I believe my purpose as a educator, I can't just say teacher anymore because I don't do much teaching anymore. But as an educator, I believe my purpose was to help others kind of find their direction when it comes to academia or education, right? That if you want to go be a researcher, you can do that. And I have students who are now in grad school doing research, right? If you want to go work in a lab, you could do that. I have students who now work in a lab, right? And it was almost like being a conductor, like a maestro. They had their sheet music with their plan for their life, right? And I'm just helping them get through that sheet of music. Yeah, there you go. So I do believe that is a part of my purpose, that sharing knowledge and helping others kind of find their direction that they may not know.
Excellent, excellent. Well, let's move on to a bit of a lightning round.
Gotcha.
A couple of questions to see a little more about you. What is your favorite class to teach?
Favorite class to teach? General Biology 2, which is essentially the study of life. And the reason I like to teach that because I like to take that journey from prokaryotic life, right, the most basic, simple forms of life, to the more complicated things like mammals, right? And I get to go on that journey with my students. And obviously teaching it for so many years, I could start to predict where those wild moments are going to come because they came for me when I was first learning this material, because a lot of us don't know some of those things. Like when we start talking about protists, most students don't even know that group of organisms exists. At one time, they existed, but they were classified as other things. So like this stuff has changed over the years, but to, expose them to that and they learn about that for the first time, always been fun. To get them to have a greater appreciation for the forms of life around them would always be the goal of that class. So I try to get them outside. We're out doing coastal wetland restoration, coastal prairie restoration, invasive species removal. So I'm trying to bring those lessons to life, right, with my students. So taking that journey through General Biology 2, being able to tell them about all the different forms of life on our planet, having them learn how those different forms of life connect to each other evolutionarily, and then being able to put in kind of the other part of me, which is the ecology aspect, bringing that into and letting the students begin to learn how life interacts with each other and interacts with their ecosystems. I always thought that was very fun to teach.
Excellent. Well, what's your favorite book that you've ever read?
Favorite book that I ever read, Are We Smart Enough to Know How Smart Animals Are? By Frans de Waal. Frans de Waal is a very, very famous primatologist. I actually just recently passed, probably about a year ago. That book was actually given to me by one of my Bio 2 students. This probably had to be like my second or third semester teaching at San Jac. He just came up to me and was like, hey, I think you're going to really enjoy this book based off of kind of just our interactions in class. And I tell you, that book gave me perspective like I've never had about who humans are in this grand scheme of things. It really made me feel small, but in a good way. Because in many cases, and humans as a species, right, as a whole, we are pretty remarkable, very remarkable. Just for the simple fact that life created something that has the ability to ponder their own existence. That's remarkable, right? Evolution created that. A species who can kind of start to think inwardly and begin to understand how life works, how we fit into it. To me, that's extremely remarkable. But this book kind of put me as a human back into my place of life on this planet, right? One, humans haven't been here very long. So we've been on the planet for that much time, right? And it made me see that we are just one of the parts of this greater living organism that our planet is. And it made me gain an even greater level of appreciation for other forms of life, their abilities, and the roles that they play to allow us even to exist. So that book, it kind of changed my views on who humans are in this entire grand scheme of living organisms on our planet. There was one thing from that particular book, because they would, one of the things humans do, we are intelligent beings. I'm not denying that. But we try to gauge other organisms' intelligence based off of our own intelligence. And we test them in ways that humans would be tested. And then we say that we are more intelligent than them because they don't perform the way we do.
We do the same thing in economics.
Right? So there was one example in the book about squirrels. They were talking about how squirrels would store up, acorns and different nuts and stuff throughout the year, so they're prepared for the trying times of the winter, right? And they store this food in various places, and their recovery rate is something like greater than 90%. They go back and find all the food that they stored. And in the book, they were talking about if humans had to do that, we probably wouldn't recover as many of the things that we stored away. So it kind of played into the skill and the intelligence of the squirrel itself. And he gave various examples of the intelligence of animals that we would not be able to replicate. And I'm saying animals like humans, that we are animals, but the intelligence of other animals that humans wouldn't be able to replicate if we were tested. If they had us in a lab.
If you judge a fish by its ability to ride a bicycle, you're not going to think much of the fish.
You're not going to think much of the fish, right? But we can't stay underwater, right? We don't have those abilities.
It's all about perspective and context,
exactly. Right? So that book, it kind of reframed how I see myself as a human within the scope of everything else, and it gave me a greater appreciation for life in all forms of life, because life is pretty remarkable. Like I mentioned before, when you look at all the different forms of life, one, we're all connected. We all share, we all share the same DNA or the makeup of the DNA that we have. So there's some type of connectivity between all of us, and it made me appreciate that. It may sound funny, but I'll go take walks with my dog, right? And I'm looking at the trees and stuff like that, and I'm thinking how we related evolutionarily. Like, I'm going through those processes in my mind. And I think a lot of that came from reading that book.
Yeah, I think it fits into the conversation that we've had several times about being part of a larger whole.
Yes.
Right? Being part of the system and appreciating my role, but also knowing that there's more to it.
There's more to it, right? My part is only a small part that makes this whole thing go. If you take away this other part, we don't work the same. So it really gives you that perspective of the team, right? And I like being a part of teams. Even to this day, I was talking to my friend just a couple of days ago. We were talking about working out, and I told him how, I no longer can motivate myself to go do it alone. I got to go do it as a part of a team. So I'm doing these workout classes with someone, coaching me through this stuff. Even though I don't technically need it, it makes me feel better to be a part of that team.
Good. Well, what you just said about taking your walks and looking at things differently, it makes me want to ask this question. What's the coolest place you've ever visited, and why do you think it was so cool?
The coolest place I've ever visited? So I'm going to go through a couple things, because I think the most impactful place I've ever visited was I was in Dakar, Senegal, for some research. I was a consultant on a research project over there looking at the ability for shrimp to climb over a dam so they could repopulate the upstream parts of a river to help prevent people from getting sick. It was a really cool project. But while I was there, I got an opportunity to visit Gorée Island. And Gorée Island, and there's several of these on the west coast of Africa, but it was one of these kind of like strong points, are places where enslaved people who were going to be enslaved would be held before they would take the trip across the Atlantic Ocean. And at Gorée Island, there's this building, and it has a door just like this. And it's called the Point of No Return. And I got the opportunity to stand in that space, because the other side of that door is just the vast Atlantic Ocean. So the boats would pull up to that space, right? And that's the last spot you would be before you were loaded onto that ship that's about to kidnap you and take you to this foreign place. And standing in that space, I've never felt the emotions that I felt at that time. To think that one of my ancestors quite possibly could have went through that door specifically, right? So that was very impactful. And one of the things I had to do was stand on the outside of the door looking in and take a picture. And that symbolized whoever that ancestor was that ended up here, my ancestor that ended up here, I was coming back. Even if Senegal wasn't where my people were from, we made it back, right? So that's probably the most impactful. So I'll never forget that experience. I have a painting of that door that sits in my office right now. So that was very impactful. It's also cool. It's a cool experience to kind of be a little bit more on the lighthearted side. I think one of the coolest places I visited, and I can't remember the name. So my mom was stationed in Bamberg, Germany, in the mid to late 90s. So I got an opportunity to go visit her a couple summers. And one day, me and the group of friends that I hung with, we went to this castle that was there. I can't remember the name of the castle, but we had to go through, we probably were in places we shouldn't have been. But taking this journey to get to the castle and seeing that, I thought that was extremely cool. It had one of those like garden mazes attached to it, so we were kind of running through that. We were afraid that the polar's eye would get us because I didn't think we were supposed to be there. But that was a pretty cool experience, seeing that.
So I guess we'll end it on this then. What's something about you that would surprise people that they don't know about you?
Oh, that's pretty cool. So I am you asked me a couple questions ago, you asked me about my favorite book. So I gave you my favorite book. My favorite story, however, is Harry Potter. I am a huge Harry Potter fan. I believe it's one of the best stories ever told. I got an opportunity to go to London as well, which was a really cool place. But one of the things I enjoyed the most about that, almost every corner there was a Harry Potter store. So I got an opportunity to go buy me some Harry Potter gear and some different things. But I'm a huge Harry Potter fan. Anytime the movies come on TV, I watch them.
Every weekend.
Exactly. If there's nothing else for me to watch, I know I could flip through a couple channels and Harry Potter will be there. It's actually a really good thing to play in the background while you're grading. But I read all the books growing up, and I'm a huge Harry Potter fan. So
all right.
I think that's one of the things people will find interesting about me.
I'm glad we know that. A man of science and magic.
There you go. How does that work, right?
All right. Well, I think that's it for today. Thank you, Tyler, Dr. Tyler Olivier, for sharing your stories with us, sharing your purpose with us, and being with us today.
There we go. Thank you, Ryan. I appreciate it.
All right. We'll see you on the next episode of Purpose.
Thanks for joining us on this week's episode of Purpose, a Faculty Excellence Institute podcast. Join us next time as we hear from one of our inspiring faculty. Keep doing great work and stay classy, San Jacinto.